I have been a journalist for 40 years. Um, and for me, like, the greatest part of journalism is telling stories and, you know, learning from people about life through their stories. I have often said that as a journalist, I have lived precariously through the stories of people that we've written about. People who've either have gone through great tragedy and who have gone great triumph. That I learned something from all these stories that I've gotten to, write about and tell. And the thing about journalism, more than anything else, it has taught me to live for the day, because in journalism, you can't do anything to change what happened yesterday. And you can't do anything about tomorrow because it hasn't happened. So you really learn to live for today, and you learn to live for what today represents, and you try to live, I hope I try, to get the most out of this one day, and then tomorrow will take care of itself. For me, I've always considered myself one of the luckiest people in journalism. I have met so many talented writers and photographers, and I've gotten to see a life through an incredible prism. One of my toughest days in journalism was 9/11, for all the obvious reasons. But on the same day in 9/11, as I'm putting out a paper, I also found out that among the tens of thousands of people who were missing was my father. And there was nothing I could do, but I stayed at my desk and I did my job, and hopefully and luckily we did find him 3 days later. But also because of journalism, on the flip side, I was able to travel to China. And I found the village where he grew up as a boy. And I also found the hut, and I mean hut, the little shack where he lived. And I found relatives that he long thought had died. I talk about being given two great gifts in terms of my career. And because of the timing of this all, it has been like an incredible life. At age of 5, I didn't speak a word of English. I'm now an editor at one of the top American newspapers. It is an incredible and unlikely story. And somewhere in my collection I have this, and this incredibly is a true story. In 1963, on the front page of the evening edition of the Daily News, there was a picture of a Chinese woman who were taking her children to school, first day of classes. And this is 1963. This is before, the word diversity or inclusion was part of our daily lexicon now. About 40 years later, that woman's son became the executive editor of the Daily News, and that was me. And one of the first things that we did, we found that photo in the archives, and I was able to make a present of that to my mother before she passed away. So for me, journalism has been, a very personal journey, because It has given me opportunities in life that I don't think I would have otherwise deserved or achieved. But, you know, as someone once said, if you're going to go through life when the bad things happen and say, why me? Well, in my case, I often go through my life and I look at these wonderful things that have happened. I also say, why me? So it has been, you know, for me, a very blessed time. But to take it to Richmond, that's why I think this job is important to me. Because as journalists, we are entrusted with telling other people's stories. Those stories aren't mine, they're not ours, it's not the Times-Dispatch's stories. These stories belong to our neighbors, to our friends, to our colleagues, to our fellow citizens. And I think because the value of stories is so important to me, we inherit a very noble responsibility. And so we need to get things right. We need to be truthful. And I hope we tell stories that help people out, whether it's about their communities or state legislatures or things happening around the corner or things happening around the world. That is the beauty of stories.